Hey solos, so you're going to Disney World by yourself. How do you navigate traveling around this big giant world on your own? Is it something you should be scared of? Is it something you should worry about? Is it something that you need to plan a lot in advance? Well, here is a little solo spoiler for you. Disney World was designed to get you to all these different places. It's one of the easiest places as a solo to be able to travel within because of the transportation systems that was actually built into the way Walt Disney World was created. It is not something you have to worry about. It's not something you have to plan for, but it is something that you have to be aware that it might take longer than if you were just doing this driving on your own. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking about the different transportation systems at Walt Disney World. So you won't be worried when you go on your own about how to do this. You'll just be aware of the options that you'll have ahead of you. Hi everyone, it's Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do, and welcome to Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Walt Disney World. In today's episode, I'm taking a break from the series that I'm doing talking about all the value and moderate resorts to focus just on transportation. One of the things that I talk about when I've been doing the value resort and moderate resort reviews, one of the things that I talk about are the different transportation systems and why you should kind of keep an eye on whether you like that type of transportation system or not. But if you don't know really why you need to think about the different ones, then it doesn't really matter what I said. So I want to be able to identify all the different transportation systems in this episode as kind of a complement to the other episodes. Another a subtitle to this particular episode is the Skyliner. Is it really worth the upgrade from All Stars to Pop Century? That's kind of the subtitle of this episode. So there we go. You can connect with me on social media, on Instagram, on Threads, on Facebook. There's also a blog, disneysolomagic.blogspot.com. You can listen to this on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. And please make sure that you subscribe so you know when new episodes are coming. And also it'd be really, really great if you share this with other people too, people who are solo curious, or even people who are just Disney without kids curious. Because I think that that's also a big group of people that need to be talked to more. Oh, not in a reprimanding way, but in an encouraging way. Yeah, do it. Definitely do it. All right, everyone, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to begin this episode by referencing one of the very, very first episodes that I did called The Lay of the Land. Well, it was The Lay of the World, because I really wanted to give an overview of what Walt Disney World was. Because a lot of people think it is just one little amusement park. And that's it, right? But it's not. It is literally a giant world. It is the size of San Francisco. It is double the size of Manhattan. When Walt Disney built Disneyland, he wanted it to be this kind of immersive experience. He wanted not only to build Disneyland, but he wanted people to invest in all the land around Disneyland so that it could be this world unto itself. And the fact is, nobody believed in Disneyland, and they definitely weren't going to believe in buying more land. But when Disneyland became wildly successful and they were planning for Disney World in Florida, they had this vision of, no, let's create this world. Let's create this giant piece of property that will just be for us, that will just be kind of the canvas of our imaginations. And so it is not accidental that Walt Disney World is giant, and it's a world unto itself. It was part and parcel with the plan of how Walt Disney World was going to be built. And this was in direct relationship to the fact that they couldn't do this at Disneyland in California. So, appreciate how big Walt Disney World is, because the two experiences between the two parks on the different coasts, can't be compared really, because Disneyland are these two parks and Disney World is a whole world. You might compare the two Magic Kingdoms, but you can't compare the experience of being in Disneyland versus Disney World. You can see this plan of a big immersive world in the kind of original buildings that were built in Walt Disney World, which was Magic Kingdom, obviously, but also the Contemporary Resort and the Polynesian Resort. The monorail system that connected them all was a chance to be look, we want to get you from one place to another, and we recognize that we are spreading these things out so that you can experience different elements of these worlds. Grand Floridian, which sits in between Magic Kingdom and Polynesian, actually came about in the late 1980s. So that wasn't part of the original plan. They just had that big piece of property. The Ticket and Transportation Center that is also connected to the monorail was also part of that plan. The idea was that you could park and that you wouldn't actually see Magic Kingdom Park until you were like literally about to go in. The view from the like boat dock to go from the ferry to Magic Kingdom is really beautiful. And even though I have never parked in that parking lot, I have actually like been to that boat dock, and there is just like a beautiful view of the castle and also a great view of the fireworks too. Just if you're ever like, oh, maybe I'll just like stick around here and watch the fireworks, you can do that. So these elements, the monorail connecting Magic Kingdom, Polynesian Resort, the Ticket and Transportation Center, and the Contemporary Resort, this was all designed because they wanted to create this big world that were going to be big and separated, but they also wanted to get you to and from. And this is something that's important to remember when you are traveling solo to Disney now. It is the same kind of premise. They want you to be in all these different immersive worlds. They don't want these worlds to like clash into each other too much, and they're going to get you there, and they want you to get there. like trust me, they want you to get to these places. And so if you think of those things in mind, just kind of take the stress off wondering if the options are going to be available to you. They will be available to you. There are going to be different options, and which option that is the best for you depends on you, obviously. So there are 5.5 kind of sanctioned Disney transportation options. And all of these transportation options are designed to get you from the Disney hotels to the parks, and from the parks back to your hotel. There's also Disney Springs, which is an entertainment and shopping district. Disney wants you to get from your hotel to this shopping district as well. So there are a lot of different options. And the 5.5 different options are buses, the monorail that I've already mentioned, boat, Skyliner, walking, and then there's also things like third-party Lyft and Ubers. But the Lyft app also has a Disney-sanctioned version called Minnie Vans, Minnie, and those can be hired through the Lyft app, but they are run by Disney cast members, and they're in like these adorable SUVs with like Minnie Mouse polka dots all over them, and you get like the cast member experience and all that stuff. So I'm going to talk about all 5.5 of those options in order of how likely it is that you'll be using them to transport yourself around Walt Disney World. And the first one, definitely 100%, is buses. The Disney buses, I don't think are as iconic as they should be. Because I think a lot of people just like understand them as like a necessary evil. The Disney buses are a fleet of buses. I don't know how many there are, and they run continuously through operation hours, both before and after all the parks open as well, to get people to and from all the different Disney locations. It is highly unlikely that you will get through a Walt Disney World trip without taking a bus. Even if you're like, oh, I took that one bus and then never again, I'm going to pay for my own transportation options, which I will talk about at the end of the episode, then you're still going to take a bus. And I live in a city that has a really like integrated transportation system, an integrated public transportation system. And so taking a bus is like not abnormal to me. I know it is for like some Americans that live in some areas that don't have transportation systems at all. In fact, I remember I was in Las Vegas once, and there was a problem with like my air conditioning system in the room. So I had to call maintenance, and there was like a couple people that came up, a couple of different maintenance people and a security person, and I just like mentioned, oh, I don't have a car, I just take the bus. And I have never seen people look at me with such like embarrassment and sadness and surprise, and they're like, why do you take the bus? You're staying at MGM Grand. It's like, can't you afford to not take a bus? And I was like, oh, no, like we can, the buses is great. Like the bus and subway, they're great. Anyway, so I always just like have to remember that my experience of public transportation might not be yours if you don't live in places where there is a really robust public transportation system. But anyway, the Disney buses are not anything like these city buses I've ever taken in my entire life. They are clean. Usually the drivers are very, very friendly. They're all cast members. They all follow the like rules of the road to a T. If you watch carefully, maybe you think they follow too closely to those rules. I don't know. That depends on you as a driver. They are always very cold, which is great when it's very hot and not so great when you are cold yourself. But here's actually a secret, solos, that at the very back of the bus, the two, like if you go to that last row, the one that is parallel to like the driver, essentially, the two end seats are actually warm seats because of the way the, buses work, the cooling system works. So if you get into a bus and you're really cold, go right to those seats and that will warm you up for the rest of the trip. That's also a really great tip if you're coming from if you're coming from the rain or you're coming from the water park and you want to like warm up a little bit because you're in wet clothing. There you go. Go sit in those two back seats in the bus. Now, this bus system, like I said, is running all the time, and there are bus stops at every single one of the hotels, taking you from your hotel to the park of your choice. At value resorts, for example, you go to one place and you will see the different lineups for the different parks, and you will wait in that line and get on the bus. At moderate resorts, you go to one place and then you just kind of sit and wait for your bus to come. So you don't need to stand in a line like the Magic Kingdom line because you're just sitting and waiting for the Magic Kingdom bus to come. All of these bus stops also have these big screens that tell you when the next buses are coming. They are usually pretty accurate. Sometimes there's more people or less people on a bus, and that will change the time it will take to get to you if they have to unload or pick up and all that stuff. But usually they're fairly accurate. There's also a secret spot on your phone that you can check this from your hotel room. And that is in the place where your hotel reservation is. If you explore your resort, it will show you a transportation option or a get directions option, and then it will tell you when the next bus comes. Look, to be honest, I have never found this reliable or easy to access. And the time that I spend trying to figure out where on the app this is time I would just rather stand at the bus stop, especially if it's shaded, and just wait for the bus to go. So you can get a bus from your hotel to the Disney parks, but also to Disney Springs. And from Disney Springs, you can also get a bus to the water parks. Sometimes there are direct water park buses from your hotel, but that is it's really contingent on a lot of different things. So don't rely on that, but know that they want to get you there. You just might need to transfer off at Disney Springs. When you get picked up from your hotel and you're on your way to the park, most of the time it will go directly to the park after you get on. Sometimes, with the moderate resorts or even a couple of the DVC resorts, it will have to make a couple stops within the hotel to get everybody within the hotel. And then there's some hotels like Wilderness Lodge and Contemporary where they will share a bus system in between them. So they'll go and they'll pick up the other people before they head to the park of choice. Then you'll head on the highway or whatever those streets are called, and you will head to the park. Now, all of this does take a bit of time. The fact is, if you are staying at a hotel and you're oh my God, I need to get at the park in 15 minutes for my dining reservation, you're going to miss it. You're not going to make your dining reservation. The bus system does take a while, and it's all because it's people. It's run by people. There's people getting on. There's people getting off. There's a lot of things just out of control of the big giant, capital D Disney machine. And so the thing is, you just have to be patient and just be cool with that. And if you're used to doing all the driving on your own, you might find that really frustrating. And so really maybe channel some moments of just grace and patience in your travel to and from different places, and give yourself enough time. Give yourself a good 45 minutes, an hour, just so that you have extra time. And the thing is, if you do that, then you give yourself more time if you're there way early to explore the park or to explore a different resort or wherever you're going. So all of the buses, like I say, go from the hotels to the parks and from the parks back to the hotels. You cannot, except in those weird cases of Contemporary and Wilderness Lodge, you cannot get a bus that goes from one hotel to another hotel. So then in that case, places like the parks or Disney Springs acts as a bit of a transfer station for you. So let's say you're staying at Pop Century and you have a dining reservation at Ohana, which is at the Polynesian Resort. What you can do is then take the bus from Pop Century to Magic Kingdom, because Magic Kingdom is very, very close to the Polynesian Resort. And from Magic Kingdom, you can either take another bus or you can take a different transportation option, like taking a boat or the monorail, for example. But because you're going between two hotels, you're going to have to transfer. But also note that while Disney Springs has a huge bus bay for all of the resort buses, you cannot go from the parks to Disney Springs. You can't catch a bus from Disney Springs to any of the parks. And this is because they don't want people parking for free at Disney Springs and then taking the bus over to the different parks where you have to pay for parking and then spending the day there and blocking up the parking at Disney Springs. So if you're at Disney Springs and you need to get to Hollywood Studios to see Fantasmic at 9:30 or whatever, then the best option for you is to take a bus to a close by hotel such as the Boardwalk, or you can take it to a place like Caribbean Beach, can then take a Skyliner over to Hollywood Studios. It isn't super convenient, to be honest, and so make sure you plan for all of that as well. And again, like, think of the transportation part of it as part of your trip, not the part that is getting in the way of your trip. And that's why something like the Disney boats is one of my favorite options for transportation to and from the hotels and the parks and within Walt Disney World. And so now let's talk about Disney boats. Disney boats have been around almost as long as Disney World has been around. When I was at the Key West Resort last time, the boats were down because of lightning issues. And so the skipper, captain, I don't know, the boat people, they were there, and I was like, well, tell me some fun facts about the boat system. And then she told me the history of the boat system. I did not remember any of the dates, but I remembered I was kind of impressed that the system, the boat system, actually has been around and operating as kind of like this independent thing for quite a while. So like I said, Disney World is very big, but Disney World was also built on a giant piece of swampland in the middle of Orlando. And so there are a whole bunch of human-made lakes around Walt Disney World that really acts as drainage, reservoir drainage, etc., etc. I don't know. I'm sure there's probably better names for it. There are a few natural lakes, like the one, for example, between Magic Kingdom and Fort Wilderness. That's a natural lake. But the lake that is in front of Magic Kingdom, that the Polynesian and Grand Floridian and the transportation center look over, that was all human made. And all of that ground that was dug up to make that lake is actually ground that Magic Kingdom sits on. That's a whole other history lesson. But anyway, there's all of these different human made lakes and natural lakes. And so the boat system is one way that you can get around to certain places. So at the Magic Kingdom, for example, you can take a boat to the Polynesian, the Grand Floridian, Fort Wilderness, and Wilderness Lodge. Those are all different boats, I might add. You'll have to wait for all of them, but I actually love taking the boat from Magic Kingdom to Grand Floridian. It's just like a relaxing 5 or 10 minutes. It's just I don't know, just a piece of time that you just get to just enjoy. And then at the end of whatever part of that trip you're on, you're like, oh, what a great place I'm at, whether that's Grand Floridian or whether that's Magic Kingdom. Now, I think I said all those boats are separate, but actually, because Grand Floridian and Polynesian are so close together, the boat that goes from Magic Kingdom to Grand Floridian also goes to Polynesian, and then it goes back to Magic Kingdom. So it's a little bit of a triangle, and it's a really nice, little trip. I also took the boat from Polynesian back to Magic Kingdom during the fireworks one time this year, and that was pretty special too. There's a boat that also goes from Magic Kingdom to Wilderness Lodge, and then there's a boat that goes from Magic Kingdom to Fort Wilderness. There is a boat that will go in between Fort Wilderness and Wilderness Lodge that just runs in the later afternoon. It used to run all the time, but then COVID, and then I think it's only been in the last 6 to 8 months where they opened up that as a route. And when I was there last time, I noticed that route doesn't go all day long. It's just in the late afternoon, for a dinner reservation. So that's something to note as well. There's also a boat system that goes between Hollywood Studios and Epcot. So there's a body of water in between Hollywood Studios and Epcot, and there is a boat that will take you to and from those two parks. But in between that, they will stop at the Yacht and Beach Club. There's a dock there. They'll stop at the Boardwalk Hotel. There's a dock there. And they'll stop at the Swan and Dolphin Hotels. There's a dock there. So it is a very slow boat ride. You couldn't walk faster, but not by much. Like, if you had the option of like walking between Hollywood Studios and Epcot or taking the boat would probably beat you by like 5 minutes, but only by 5 minutes. The benefit, though, of the boat is that you're sitting and that you're not in direct sunlight. So that's also like a nice little route that you can take and check out the other resorts. There's also a boat system from Disney Springs to select resorts, and this is also awesome as well. So from Disney Springs, you can get the boats to two original DVC, Disney Vacation Club hotels, and that route has operated as long as those have been DVC hotels. The boat dock for those used to be right beside the place where you would get the buses. Now the buses are in a different area at Disney Springs. So you get the boats at a kind of a different, more of the older school locations at Disney Springs. But it's a nice little walk, and you get to go see the Christmas store if you're into that. At that same boat dock, there's also a boat that will take you to Port Orleans Riverside and or Port Orleans French Quarter. Sometimes they're separate boats, sometimes they're the same. It depends how busy it is. So at the end of the night, for example, they'll run two separate boats to take people to the two hotels. Most of the time, especially during the day, however, they'll just be one boat, and they'll do a stop at Riverside, and then they'll do a stop at French Quarter. And like I'll talk about later in August when I talk about Port Orleans Riverside and Port Orleans French Quarter, the boats are such a fun, nice perk. Not like the boat itself is fun, but just having this extra kind of relaxing transportation option to and from Disney Springs means that I will always go to Disney Springs when I'm staying at one of those hotels because it's just so easy to get to. And I'll go for an hour, walk around, maybe get a sandwich, come back, and it's like super chill. It isn't the stress of the buses, the fluorescent lights of the buses, the coldness, the people of the buses. The boats are just always kind of chill. Just like the buses, all of these boats are free. You wait in line. The lines are usually shaded. No, that's not entirely true. I've gotten a sunburn in the line at Fort Wilderness coming to Magic Kingdom, but that's a totally other story. And, like the little boat drivers, I know that's not what they're called, are usually very friendly, and they follow the rules like so to the T that it's really charming. I always feel very safe. Not that I don't feel safe on boats, but there's just something about like the protocol that it's clear that they follow that I find very charming. And that's one of the reasons why I like traveling to Walt Disney World solo. Now, an even more serene form of travel is the Skyliner. The Skyliner is the newest form of transportation system at Walt Disney World, and it is an aerial gondola system that are these like big giant gondolas, like these big giant, I don't know what they're called, big like enclosures in the sky. And that will take you to different places. Now, it won't take you everywhere. The Skyliner is really between Hollywood Studios and Epcot, and not even all of Epcot, for example. But the Skyliner is really, really fantastic. So the Skyliner has 3 different routes. One route goes from Pop Century and Art of Animation to the Caribbean Beach Skyliner Depot. That Caribbean Beach Skyliner Depot is the main area for the Skyliner. But I really just want to emphasize, like, this is not like a, Grand Central Station by any means. These aren't like big places that you're going to get lost. It is so easy to navigate. And there are so many cast members that will be able to direct you to the right place. I was also there when there was this big giant rainstorm. And actually, I don't know if you can hear, but there's a big giant rainstorm in Toronto, like literally as we speak. I don't know if you can hear the rain. But there were so many cast members in Florida during the Skyliner because they won't run the Skyliner if it is lightning. They got all of the people off and onto buses, and it took a while because the buses had to get there, but the level of efficiency of all the cast members to ensure that the guests were taken care of, it was second to none. So there's a delay because they have to bring the buses over, right? But that delay was really offset by the type of care that the cast members had to make sure everyone was taken care of. Okay, so at this Caribbean Beach depot, like I said, Pop Century and Art of Animation, there's a Skyliner line that will drop people off right there. Then once you're there, you can go to Hollywood Studios, and so that's the second Skyliner line. It goes from that Caribbean Beach depot right to Hollywood Studios. The rides on both of those lines, I would say, is like 5 to 10 minutes. And usually there are like very long lines in the morning, I've heard. If you listen a lot to this podcast, you know I'm not an early morning person, and I'm not really interested in rope dropping, so I avoid that when possible. Yeah, the line is long, but the Skyliner goes very quickly. Like, oh God. No, it's not like a quick ride. It's just that it's really easy to get people on and off. So it's able to move through people very, very quickly. So at the Caribbean Beach, you can get there from Art of Animation and Pop. You can go to Hollywood Studios. You can also come back from Hollywood Studios, obviously. And then the third route is a longer route. It's it's like a S or a Z shaped route. It's not very efficiently laid out. Once you're on the Skyliner, you're like, oh, it feels like we could have just done a much more direct route, but don't worry about that. It's not a huge deal. That will take you to Epcot, but it will make a stop first at the Riviera Resort. And the Riviera Resort is just on the other side of the Caribbean Beach Resort. So that first stop is just over Caribbean Beach. It will stop at the Riviera, pick more people up or drop more people off, which is what I've done to go and get something nice to eat at the Riviera. And then from the Riviera, it will head to Epcot, and it will turn at a particular point. Usually there's like an automated voice that'll be like, this is a special turning depot for blah, 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 blah. So there you go. You can learn something there. And then it will head to Epcot. And once it gets to Epcot, it will let people out in between France and England. So if you're going to Walt Disney World solo to really just appreciate Epcot and the Food and Wine Festival, and you're on a budget, so you're staying at a value or moderate resort, then stay at Pop Century or stay at Caribbean Beach, because then you're able to like just land right in World Showcase. You don't need to walk through the rest. Now, of course, if you have a larger budget, you can also stay at a place like Yacht Club or Beach Club, because that's walking distance to that same area. And I don't like the Swan and Dolphin hotels, but that's also an option as well for walking, but that's separate from this particular conversation. The Skyliner is just so chill. I think they can get like up to 10 people in those little, I don't know what they're called, the little gondolas. I don't think they would ever max out more at 8. And I've been in there with like 6 people, not people I know, but most of the time I'm in there by myself, or I'm in there with one other couple, or I'm in there with another solo. Like, they don't jam them full. Like when you're on the buses, for example, you were just in there with all the strangers, because it is a much more intimate space. It's a much smaller space. The cast members will never just jam people in there. And this has never, ever, ever, ever happened to me. But if you think they're going to put you with someone who you're not comfortable sitting with, I'm sure you can say like, I would rather go with this strange family than like these strange people or whatever. I've never felt any sort of security concerns though in the Skyliner, even though it is a much more small, intimate space. But I said that the other title for this particular episode is the Skyliner worth it? And to be honest, I really, really think it is. It is definitely nice to have an alternative transportation other than the buses, especially if you're staying at Pop Century, which is a value resort, and usually they don't have a lot of other transportation options, just kind of like by design. And so having the Skyliner, because I like to go to Epcot so much, is really, really great. And even though Hollywood Studios is like not my favorite park, I will go to Hollywood Studios more, if at all, because it is so, so convenient to get there. I'll walk around Sunset Boulevard, maybe I'll go on Tower of Terror, I'll go check out Fantasmic, and then head back. I've also like stayed at Pop Century, gone to Hollywood Studio. Again, I'm an annual pass member, so I'm not like thinking about like the ticket price. Maybe I should. I've gone to Hollywood Studios, just looked for some merchandise, and then like came right back. And it was like a 30-minute trip. It was amazing how efficient it was. So is the Skyliner worth it? Yeah, it really, really is. If Epcot, specifically World Showcase and Hollywood Studios, are like the places that you're going to spend the most of your time. Okay, so if the Skyliner is this like new fancy system, the older fancy system is the monorail. And the monorail, there's two different systems. It will take you from Magic Kingdom to the monorail hotels and will also take you back to the transportation system. Once at the transportation system, you can also take a monorail to Epcot. And people talk about these monorails all the time and like, ooh, the monorail from Epcot to Magic Kingdom, but you still need to like transfer between them. Okay, I'm going to tell you a secret, Solos. I don't really see what the big deal of the monorail is, like other than nostalgic reasons. I find it always smells like a barnyard. That doesn't even make any sense. It's never very cool. It always seems to take way longer than you expect, especially if you're standing at Polynesian and you just want to go to Grand Floridian. The last time I was there, it took like 45 minutes and there was no reason for that to happen. And yeah, I don't know, especially like transferring between, like everyone always says, the monorail between Epcot and Magic Kingdom, but you have to transfer. And to be honest, to me, it's not worth it. Like when you take the monorail to Epcot, they do this nice little loop around and you can get to see Epcot. And that is certainly very, very cool. But just in general, the monorail is my least favorite form of transportation. Another form of transportation that people don't really talk about is walking. And although you already do a lot of walking in the parks, there are certain resorts where you can walk to the parks already. And that's kind of nice. So you can actually walk from Grand Floridian to Magic Kingdom. And they actually just created this new-ish, like around COVID time, new walkway that's really nice. You used to be able to walk to the Polynesian as well. And that walkway will open up again. But right now it's closed because of the construction of the new DVC tower. But I often will have walked from Magic Kingdom to Grand Floridian, got something to eat or drink, and then walked to Polynesian, and just like hung out and then took the bus back to Magic Kingdom. So I kind of miss that walk between Grand Floridian and Polynesian. It will be back, I'm pretty sure. You can also walk from the Yacht and Beach Club and Boardwalk to Hollywood Studios and to Epcot, and that's pretty cool. I know a lot of people really like to do that when they're like drinking around the world and they want to like stumble back to their room. So there's an option there if you're into that. Most of the resorts, you can't walk to the parks. So just like know that isn't like if you're like, oh, I'm not going to take the bus. I'm just going to walk from All Stars to Magic Kingdom. You cannot. That is literally an impossible thing for one to do. So it's not like you can walk from all of the resorts to the parks. No, definitely not. However, when you can, there are definitely walking paths. There's also walking paths within the resorts, and I would really, really recommend like exploring the resorts. That's what I'm going to be talking about so much in August about the moderate resorts because of the way they're laid out. They're really kind of cool to walk around and explore. So walk around within the resorts as well. Like just remember, Walt Disney World is not just the parks. It's also the resorts. It's also those experiences, and take advantage of exploring them, and sometimes by foot is the best way to do that. The last transportation system is that half system. It's the Minnie Vans system. So you can go on your Lyft app and you can get a minivan to come and take you from here to there. Now, the Minnie Vans, like I said, are run by Disney cast members, Disney cast service, all that stuff. They're SUVs, nice and big, blah, blah, blah. They are very expensive. Last year for my birthday, I said to my mom, like, ooh, I'm going to get us a minivan. And it was like $40. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. That's not necessary because like a regular Lyft was under $10. But the benefit of the minivan is that it has things like car seats. And so it really is a much better option if you're traveling with like a whole bunch of people. If you're super concerned about safety and the cost isn't a huge thing for you, then definitely go and like get a minivan. But I really don't think it's necessary as a solo. Now, Lyft, on the other hand, Lyft and Uber is something that has become increasingly more common in people's experiences, including people's solo experiences. So even though it's not like sanctioned Disney transportation, I am now going to talk about that. So the first time that I ever took a Lyft or an Uber or anything like that was actually when I was in Florida in February 2020 going to Walt Disney World. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I was there with my mother. I had a conference and I was like, why don't you come to Florida with me? And she's like, should we go to Disney after? And I was like, I have not been to Disney since 2014, and yes, I definitely want to go to Disney. So we took a lift from Jacksonville to Walt Disney World, and it was the first time I ever took a lift. Now, once I had it on my app, once I had it on my phone, the app on my phone, I was able to see the prices between different places in the Walt Disney World bubble and realized that, especially like with my mother, it was more convenient, especially if we had like a late night dinner reservation, to be able to go and use Lyft rather than the bus system. And so I did start using Lyft then, and that was February 2020, so right before the pandemic. All of our Lyft experiences were amazing. All of the drivers were friendly. The cars were spotless. They all smelled nice. It was like such a lovely, lovely experience. But then when we went back after the pandemic, Lyft had changed quite considerably. The drivers seemed a lot just more like random Florida locals, and we a few times were just like in people's like literal Minnie Vans with like their kids' Cheerios on the floor. And it was just a very different experience. And immediately it took us out of the Disney bubble. And like, that's the thing. When I go to Disney, I want to be in the Disney bubble. And if I have great customer service and a nice smelling car for not too much money, then that's great. But when we were taking these lifts in like August 2021, it just felt like, ooh, no, too much real life. This is not what we want. And so we kind of stopped taking lifts around that time. But in the last year, I have started taking lifts again. And the lifts are actually a pretty affordable price. They're usually under $10 between where you want to go from one area of Disney World to another area of Disney World. And that's because while Disney is very spread out, it also is not that spread out if you are going by car. The distance between Hollywood Studios and Epcot is not really as amazingly large as your brain thinks it is when somebody is driving you in a car and is taking the like street directly from point A to point B, rather than doing all these like other types of, not maneuvers, but other types of routes for whatever reason. And so when there's been like early morning dining reservations or late night dining reservations or like a sun headache or all these other things, then taking a Lyft or an Uber has been actually a really great option, both when I go by myself and when I go with my mother. I don't like to rely on Lyft and Ubers too much because I do like to stay on the bubble. The Disney transportation system is all free, so adding that additional cost, especially as a Canadian, I also have to do the exchange. So if it's like $7 American, it's like, it's like $10 or $11 Canadian, which makes me sound cheap. But if you do it a few times a day, that adds up, like why wouldn't you rather spend it on Genie Plus or like the new Lightning Lane system? What I find is a lot of the drivers are people that just do driving within Walt Disney World. They don't really do anything outside of Orlando. They do these quick drives. They do them a lot. They do them and they're very, very friendly. I've had Uber drivers or Lyft drivers who are like, oh, I just really want these 10-minute trips or these 5-minute trips with friendly people on vacation. I don't really want to go outside in Orlando and do all this other stuff. I just do Lyft here. And that's really nice because often you can like strike up a conversation if you want. And if they're local, they can tell you some other things. Like someone was saying how great the Christmas stuff was at SeaWorld, which is not something I'd ever consider before. So it's always actually been a really great experience. But it is one that takes you out of the Disney bubble a bit, and it is one that costs something additional. And if you don't want that, then you have other options. But I see sometimes a lot of people on Facebook, for example, will ask questions like, oh, I have, an Ohana breakfast reservation and I'm coming from All Stars. I think I already used this example today. How do I get there? And like, if it's a breakfast reservation, honestly, just take a Lyft. Like, that's my response. You can do all this maneuvering, but when it's the first thing in the morning and you can't really rely on the buses yet because the park isn't even open, like, honestly, just take a Lyft. I think actually one of the reasons why we did a Lyft on that first trip was because we did the Starlight Safari at Animal Kingdom Lodge, which is like a really cool evening time safari through the savannah at Animal Kingdom Lodge. It starts at like 9:30 and it ends, like at 11:30 or something like that. And my mother doesn't like to, well, she's not able to stay up late really. So the only way to like make it the most efficient was to be able to take a lift there and back, because like the extra sitting on the bus and waiting for all that, it just would have been too much. So there's just some cases where taking a lift is great because it will take you to and from. Most of the time that like direct to and from is between the different hotels, not even between the park and the hotel, because there are a lot of other options for that. So know that is an option. If you're traveling solo and you're a woman, you might be like concerned about being in a car by yourself with a strange person. When I was there earlier this year, Lyft identified that there was an option where I could just request a woman or a femme driver if you are a woman and a femme person yourself as an extra safety precaution. But generally, because the travel time when you're going around the Walt Disney World Resort to like the different hotels is so nominal that if you feel like you are in an unsafe position, you're getting out of the car like very quickly, and then you can report it accordingly, right? So it's not like you're in the car for 20 minutes. You'll be in the car for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can get out of the, not to say that bad things can't happen in 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not saying that, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Now, one final thing in this episode, because it's already gone on longer than I expected, especially when I'm talking about Lyft and Uber, is transportation to and from the airport. So right now there are 3 different transportation options to and from the airport. Well, I guess 4 if you're planning on renting a car, which I'm not going to talk about today. Those 3 options are the Mears bus route, the Lynx bus route, which is a different bus route, and a Lyft or an Uber. Now, the Lynx bus route is a brand new thing. It just opened, I think, in April. It's part of the city bus system for Orlando. It costs like $3 or $3.50, something like that, and it will take you to Disney Springs. But it is a city bus system. It is not, it is like direct-ish. It's not like super direct. It's going to take a while. Plus, it gets you to Disney Springs. It won't drop you off right at your hotel, which you might not mind. Sometimes the Disney buses won't let you take your own big suitcase on because, I mean, that's not what those buses are for. So if you have like a big check-on bag, you might get to Disney Springs and still have to take a Lyft or an Uber. And actually, if you do that, I would just not recommend taking that $3.50 Lynx bus route, because the place to get the Ubers is a totally different places than the Disney buses. So if you want a whole episode on that, I haven't taken the bus route myself, but just like talking about that, I can do like a little mini episode talking about that. But anyway, if you do just like have a backpack or a quick carry-on and you want to be economical, then that is an option for you. The other option, like I said when I was segueing in, is Lyft or Uber, and I'll come back to that in a second. And then the third option, and I think the best option for solos, especially in getting to your hotel, is the Mears Sunshine Express bus route. And that is an additional cost, and it's a third party, but it's sanctioned by Disney. It's like under $20 one way. You get on a bus with people who are going to different Disney resorts, and they'll drop you off at your Disney resort. And then if you get a round trip ticket, it will pick you up at your resort, at your Disney resort, and take you right back to the airport. Usually the Lyft and Uber is like double the cost of a one-way Mears trip. And if you are by yourself and you don't have anyone to absorb that additional cost, I think Mears is a great option. I also think it's a safer option, like I said, to get to your hotel, because it's not like you're in the car with a stranger to be like, yeah, I'm just staying at this hotel all by myself, you know? And people don't necessarily like how long it takes, but I've always had very quick experiences. Like, again, you just have to expect it's going to take a while because it's a bus that other people are going to take, right? But I've always actually had very quick experiences, and I've always had very good experiences with the Mears bus, especially getting to the hotel. And as a solo, I would recommend that for sure. You can take a Lyft or an Uber. Like I said, it's about double the cost, and that will also get you to your hotel, and it will get you to your hotel faster, 100%, because it's just that person driving you and not a whole bus system getting people to all the different resorts. And so that's up to you. However, I do actually like to take a Lyft or an Uber to the airport at the end of my trip, especially if I have a very late flight. So a lot of the times I will fly out at like 9:30. And Mears, the bus system, they want to get you to the airport with enough time so that you can't say, oh, I missed my flight and it's Mears' fault, right? They don't want that. So they're going to get you to the airport with like a lot of time and maybe too much time. So at 9:30, if my flight's at 9:30, I want to be able to stay at the park or the hotel to the very last minute, and then taking an Uber directly there is a good option. A few times though, I've kind of gotten screwed a little bit and that like Lyft or Uber drivers will cancel on me. I have found that those were times where there was like other things happening in Orlando, and so the traffic was really bad. But that's just something to kind of keep in mind, that you're taking a risk if you take a Lyft or an Uber at the very last minute to the airport for your flight. In that case, it's still, like I said, double the price of the Mears bus. But for me, that price now like means something else, because I am paying that additional cost to be able to stay an extra hour, even an hour and a half at the parks or in a resort. And that means something to me. But there have been times where I've had to go and my flight was like at 6 a.m. And in those cases, I definitely would take Mears. In those cases, I have taken Mears. I don't want to risk somebody canceling on me that early in the morning. I want to make sure that someone's going to show up. And it's really early. But like at that time, it's not like I have energy. It's not like I'm going to do anything else. If I sleep an extra hour or sleep an extra half an hour, like it's not really going to make a difference. I'm already going to be like without sleep. So if my flight is early in the morning, then I will take Mears. But if my flight is like in the afternoon or late at night, I'll just take an Uber because I want to spend that extra time in the parks. But generally, Mears is my go-to, and I would really recommend it if you're solo as a transportation option to the parks for sure. All right, so much has been covered. Hopefully this was informative. I have recorded a version of this episode before and I lost it when I was like cleaning up different files. And I think this time I actually was able to be a lot more streamlined in how I was like talking about the different transportation systems. The last time I recorded it, it was longer, and I used a lot of other examples. And I think that like having the examples aren't really great when you're trying to just like provide that overview, because like, you know, one of the examples that I would use is going from the boardwalk to Caribbean, and that takes the Skyliner. That's not really a good example of the bus, but if I haven't talked about the Skyliner yet, then like blah, blah, blah. Anyway, however, I am kind of interested in playing a bit of a game where I pick like a resort and or a park and then a time of day, and then like talk you through how I would do that transportation. And like I did with the Genie Plus video that that didn't really need to be done because I'm no longer doing Genie Plus. So if you're interested in those as like a little bonus episodes, then maybe I'll do a quick series of those, like the ride, rid, and relocate ones, like these little 5-10 minute episodes. So anyway, I hope you have a great rest of the day, solos, and I can't wait to talk with you about Caribbean Beach next week. Bye. Hey solos, it's Samantha. I hope you like this episode and all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic, the podcast about the magic of going to Disney World solo. Just a reminder to subscribe, to rate, review, to comment, to share, so that other people can learn about the magic of going to Disney World solo. Also, connect with me on social media. You can find me on Instagram, on Threads, on Facebook, and on the blog disneysolomagic.blogspot.com. On Instagram, I am Disney_solo_magic_podcast, as well as on Threads at Disney_solo_magic_podcast. And on Facebook, it's Disney Solo Magic. Again, the blog address is disneysolomagic.blogspot.com. Until next week, bye!